Welcome back to Narcissist Recovery. Somber. If you've ever been trapped in a relationship with a narcissist, there's a painful truth you eventually come to recognize. Their need for control isn't always the end goal. In some cases, that obsession becomes far darker. It evolves into a desire to completely erase your sense of self. They don't simply want to influence your life. They want to leave you feeling powerless, invisible, and emotionally shattered. The warning signs of this mindset are often subtle, making them easy to overlook until the damage has already been done. Serious, one of the earliest clues isn't found in their actions, but in their attitude toward your suffering. Behind their calm appearance, they may secretly fantasize about your downfall. They imagine you failing, losing everything you've built, or becoming completely dependent on them. These aren't passing thoughts. They become recurring mental scenarios that feed their need to feel superior. A narcissist isn't satisfied with winning an argument or proving they're right. They crave something much deeper. They want to see your confidence collapse, your identity fade, and your spirit worn down until you no longer recognize yourself. In their private world, they cast themselves as the victor while imagining you defeated. If you pay close attention, you'll notice glimpses of this hidden mindset. It appears in the slight smile when something goes wrong for you, the satisfaction they seem to feel when you experience a setback, or the jokes that leave lasting emotional wounds. Those moments aren't always accidental. They reveal how much pleasure they can take from your pain because your suffering reinforces their sense of control. For a narcissist, your tears aren't met with compassion. Instead, they become evidence that they still have power over you. Every emotional reaction you give them confirms that they can influence your inner world. That feeling of dominance becomes addictive, and once they experience it, they often want more. They rarely reveal these thoughts directly. Instead, they disguise them behind sarcastic comments, subtle threats, or arrogant remarks like, "You'd never make it without me," or "You'll realize one day how much you need me." While these statements may sound like simple ego, they're often rooted in a much darker desire to see you struggle so they can feel important. The danger is that fantasies can gradually shape behavior. The more they imagine your failure, the more invested they become in making it happen. That's why so many survivors describe feeling as though the narcissist was quietly waiting for them to fall apart. It isn't irrational to sense that someone wants to see you fail. Sometimes your instincts recognize what your mind hasn't fully accepted yet. You notice it in their silence when you're hurting. You see it in their satisfaction when you stumble. Most revealing of all, you feel it in their disappointment when you begin healing. Your recovery reminds them they no longer control you, and that's something they find incredibly difficult to accept. As their need for control grows stronger, their thoughts often become more extreme. They stop hoping you'll simply make mistakes and begin imagining a future where you're completely broken. That's why those small warning signs matter. The unsettling smile during your pain, the strange calm they show when tragedy enters your life, or the way they seem to anticipate your downfall all point toward a deeply unhealthy mindset. Long before they destroy your confidence publicly, they work to erase who you are privately. This process is rarely sudden. It's slow, calculated, and almost invisible at first. They don't attack your identity in one dramatic moment. Instead, they dismantle it piece by piece until the person you once knew begins to disappear. It usually starts with constant criticism disguised as concern. They question your decisions, your abilities, your dreams, and your judgment. Are you sure you're capable of that? I don't think other people see you the way you do. Maybe you're not as talented as you believe. These comments may seem small individually, but repeated over time, they become psychological poison. Eventually, their voice grows louder than your own inner confidence. You begin questioning yourself before making even simple decisions. Once your self-belief weakens, they often move to the next stage. Isolation. Friends suddenly become bad influences. Family members are described as jealous, toxic, or unsupportive. Anyone who encourages your independence becomes a threat in the narcissist's eyes. Slowly, your support system disappears until you're left relying almost entirely on the narcissist for validation and direction. When their voice becomes the only one surrounding you, they gain the power to redefine your reality. They tell you who you are, what you should think, how you should feel, and what your future should look like. Little by little, your individuality fades. Instead of living your own life, you begin living according to the version of yourself they've created. This isn't love. It's psychological domination. After separating you from the people who grounded you, they begin targeting the parts of you that once made you feel alive. Your hobbies are dismissed as pointless. Your accomplishments are minimized. The work you're proud of is criticized or mocked until you stop believing it has value. Every passion that once strengthened your identity becomes another target because the stronger your sense of self becomes, the harder it is for them to control you. The goals that once inspired you become the very things they ridicule. They mock your ambitions until you begin feeling embarrassed for ever believing in yourself. This isn't random criticism. It's a deliberate attempt to dismantle your identity. They understand that if they can destroy the qualities that make you unique, they can leave you emotionally hollow. And someone who feels empty is far easier to manipulate, discard, or replace. This is one of the darkest stages of narcissistic abuse. Before they ever try to remove you from their life, they work to erase the person you used to be. By the time they've finished attacking your confidence, your passions, and your sense of worth, they've already pushed you to the point where you barely recognize yourself. Once they've emotionally drained you, crossing into even more destructive behavior no longer feels like a huge step to them. They've already measured your breaking point. They know how much pain you can tolerate, how much hope they can extinguish, and how much of your identity they can strip away before you stop resisting. Every victory feeds their sense of superiority because, in their mind, they've already defeated you long before the relationship ends. The frightening part is that this transformation often happens so gradually you don't realize what's happening until one day you wake up feeling like a stranger in your own life. You question every decision. You hesitate before speaking. Your confidence disappears, replaced by shame, self-doubt, and the belief that you have little value on your own. None of that happens by chance. It's the result of a carefully repeated pattern of manipulation designed to weaken your spirit. They want you emotionally defeated long before they ever let you go. Many survivors describe feeling numb, disconnected, or as though a part of them had died during the relationship. That's because narcissistic abuse often targets your identity before anything else, leaving you feeling disconnected from the person you once were. When a narcissist becomes consumed with controlling you, influence is no longer enough. They seek complete authority over every aspect of your life. They want access to your thoughts, your choices, your relationships, and your future. In their mind, your independence feels like something that threatens them, so they treat your life as though it belongs to them. Every decision you make is examined, every conversation becomes suspicious. Every step toward independence feels to them like an act of betrayal. The more you begin reclaiming your freedom, the more determined they become to pull you back under their control. This rarely starts with obvious domination. More often, it disguises itself as concern. Who were you talking to? Where have you been? What exactly did you tell them? At first glance, these questions may seem caring, but over time they reveal a different purpose. They're collecting information, monitoring your routines, and learning your emotional triggers so they can anticipate your behavior and maintain influence over you. They pay close attention to your habits, your friendships, your insecurities, and your fears. Every detail becomes another tool they can use when they need to manipulate the situation in their favor. Whenever you make an independent choice, you're often met with criticism, suspicion, or guilt, making freedom feel emotionally expensive. What makes this pattern so dangerous is how slowly it develops. It begins with small suggestions. Maybe you shouldn't wear that. I don't think those people really care about you. You always make the same mistakes. Little by little, suggestions become expectations. Expectations become rules. Before long, they're deciding who you spend time with, what you say, where you go, and even how you think. Eventually, resisting feels more exhausting than giving in, so compliance starts to seem like the easier option, but every compromise gives them more influence. The truth is, no amount of control ever satisfies them because control isn't their final objective. Domination is. The moment they realize they can no longer completely control you, they often begin seeing your independence as a direct threat. In their distorted worldview, anything they cannot dominate becomes something they feel compelled to punish or eliminate from their emotional landscape. That's why their obsession with control can gradually evolve into an obsession with your downfall. To them, your ability to thrive without them challenges the image of power they've built around themselves. What makes this especially unsettling is how personal the experience feels. You're not dealing with random hostility. You're dealing with someone who treats your life as an extension of their own ego. Every attempt you make to reclaim your voice encourages them to push even harder. They test boundaries, manipulate circumstances, and search for emotional weak spots they can exploit to regain control. Living under that constant pressure is exhausting. You begin questioning your instincts, second-guessing your decisions, and worrying about the consequences of simply living your own life. While you're struggling just to preserve your peace of mind, they're often focused on finding new ways to maintain influence over you. Over time, that relentless desire for control can transform into something even darker. For them, control represents ownership. If they can no longer possess you, they may become consumed with the need to see you fail instead. One of the most damaging ways this happens isn't through open confrontation, but through carefully planned attacks on your reputation. Rather than confronting you directly, they spread subtle lies, distort facts, and plant doubts in other people's minds. This calculated campaign of rumors and half-truths is known as character assassination, and it's one of the narcissist's most powerful weapons because it allows them to damage your life while keeping their own hands seemingly clean. It's a quiet, calculated attack designed to leave you looking unstable, dishonest, or difficult in the eyes of everyone around you. Most people never recognize it for what it is because it unfolds slowly and behind closed doors. But for the person living through it, it can feel as though their entire world is being dismantled piece by piece. While you're focused on protecting your integrity, the narcissist is quietly reshaping how others perceive you. One of their most effective tactics is the smear campaign. It rarely begins with outrageous accusations. Instead, it starts with subtle distortions, carefully edited versions of the truth, and lies disguised as concern. They share selective stories with friends and family that make you appear unreasonable. They present themselves to coworkers as the misunderstood victim, while subtly casting you as the source of every problem. Over time, the people who once trusted you begin pulling away, uncertain about what to believe. These attacks are difficult to defend against because they're built around fragments of reality. The narcissist mixes small truths with exaggerations, takes your emotional reactions out of context, and highlights ordinary human mistakes until they appear to define your character. Before you fully realize what's happening, they've already influenced the opinions of those around you. That's what makes this strategy so destructive. It begins long before you know you need to defend yourself. You notice the consequences before you understand the cause. Friends become distant. Coworkers seem unusually reserved. Family members suddenly question your motives. You can sense that something has changed, but no one explains why. Meanwhile, the narcissist quietly enjoys watching the confusion unfold. They don't always need direct confrontation to damage your life. Instead, they weaponize your relationships. By controlling the narrative, they gradually isolate you from the people who once provided support. As your social circle shrinks, your confidence begins to shrink with it, leaving you feeling increasingly alone and uncertain. Eventually, it may feel as though your identity has been erased without anyone ever laying a hand on you. You begin doubting your own memories, questioning your instincts, and wondering whether your version of reality can even be trusted anymore. That confusion is exactly what they were hoping to create. Every rumor, every misleading story, and every carefully planted doubt becomes another layer separating you from the people who care about you. Their objective isn't simply to hurt your feelings. They want to make sure your voice loses credibility, your support system disappears, and your value becomes invisible to others. Once they've achieved that, they can stand back and watch you struggle inside a reality they deliberately helped create. That's why recognizing the early warning signs matters so much. Unexpected changes in how friends behave, unusual distance from coworkers, or sudden misunderstandings that seem to spread without explanation may not be random. In some situations, they can signal that someone has been quietly manipulating the story behind your back. Their abuse extends far beyond simple manipulation because, for many narcissists, another person's emotional suffering becomes a source of gratification. They don't only want influence. They want the emotional reward that comes from watching someone lose confidence, hope, or stability. Seeing you overwhelmed gives them a temporary feeling of power. Your sadness reinforces their sense of importance. Your anxiety makes them feel significant. Every emotional collapse becomes proof in their mind that they still have control. They rarely reveal this satisfaction openly. Instead, they often hide behind false compassion, carefully rehearsed concern, or words that appear supportive on the surface. But beneath that mask, they're paying close attention to every moment you struggle. Each emotional wound becomes another reminder that they've managed to affect your life. Their cruelty often begins in ways that seem almost insignificant. A sarcastic remark, a subtle insult disguised as helpful advice, a cutting joke followed by, "I was only kidding." Individually, these moments may appear harmless. Together, they slowly erode your confidence until you begin questioning your own abilities, your judgment, and even your worth. The moment they see that uncertainty growing inside you, they know their manipulation is working. Their goal is to make you emotionally dependent, fragile, and convinced that your peace depends on their approval. Once that belief takes hold, escaping the cycle becomes far more difficult. Unfortunately, these behaviors rarely stay the same. They tend to intensify over time. The narcissist searches for new ways to provoke emotional reactions, create self-doubt, and keep you psychologically off balance. Your responses become something they study. Every attempt you make to defend yourself, every tear you shed, and every moment you lose your composure is treated as confirmation that they still have influence over you. Your resilience doesn't inspire admiration. Instead, They often view your strength as another obstacle they need to overcome. The more determined you are to heal, the harder they may work to undermine your confidence because your recovery represents the one thing they fear most, losing their power over you. Perhaps the most disturbing part is how ordinary everything appears to outsiders. To everyone else, the narcissist may seem thoughtful, charismatic, generous, or remarkably patient. They carefully cultivate an image that earns trust and admiration. At the same time, the person enduring the abuse may begin appearing anxious, withdrawn, emotionally reactive, or overwhelmed. That contrast is rarely accidental. It's often one of the most carefully constructed parts of the narcissist's strategy, allowing them to protect their reputation while leaving the real victim struggling to convince others that the abuse was ever happening at all. One of the most confusing parts of narcissistic abuse is that it feels like you're living in two completely different worlds. In public, the narcissist carefully presents themselves as thoughtful, charming, and compassionate. Behind closed doors, however, you experience a completely different person, one who manipulates, belittles, and slowly tears away at your confidence. While everyone else sees the mask, you're left living with the reality hidden beneath it. Over time, they begin making you question your own mind. You start wondering if you're overreacting, maybe you're too emotional, maybe you misunderstood what happened, maybe you're the one creating problems. That uncertainty isn't accidental. It's one of the most effective tools they have because the less you trust your own judgment, the more likely you are to rely on theirs. When your confidence in yourself disappears, your dependence on them grows stronger, and that dependence becomes another source of validation for their inflated sense of importance. But for some narcissists, even that isn't enough. Their desire gradually shifts beyond controlling your emotions and into something much darker, the need to erase your place in their world completely. Your suffering becomes only the beginning. What they truly want is a reality where your voice no longer matters, your influence disappears, and your presence feels as though it never existed. This isn't driven by love, heartbreak, or grief. It's driven by a relentless need to feel victorious. You may notice this change in subtle ways. Without much explanation, they begin constructing a future that no longer includes you. They develop new relationships, strengthen connections with people who support their version of events, and search for someone new to fill the role you once occupied. They may suddenly appear unusually social, pursue new romantic interests, or build alliances that reinforce their carefully crafted image. To you, the shift feels cold and confusing. To them, it feels like preparation. At the same time, they may become strangely focused on everything connected to your life, your accomplishments, your friendships, your reputation, even the things that once made you feel proud. Rather than simply moving on, they seem determined to replace your influence or diminish the value of what you've built. Their goal isn't merely to prove they can survive without you. They want to convince both themselves and everyone watching that your absence somehow made their life better. Long before the relationship officially ends, they've already begun rehearsing that story in their mind. They imagine themselves as the resilient survivor while gradually rewriting history so that you become the source of every problem. This mental preparation eventually becomes visible through their actions. They distance themselves emotionally. They stop arguing as often. The emotional explosions fade, replaced by an unsettling calm. To someone unfamiliar with narcissistic behavior, this might look like personal growth or acceptance. In reality, it can sometimes signal something very different. They've already decided how the story will end. That calm isn't always peace. Sometimes it's the confidence of someone who believes they've already secured control of the narrative and is simply waiting for the final chapter to unfold. This represents one of the final stages of narcissistic manipulation. The desire to control gradually transforms into a desire to erase your significance altogether. They don't simply want distance, they want to make sure your reputation, your credibility, and even the memory of your perspective become increasingly difficult for others to recognize. Perhaps the greatest act of resistance is refusing to let them define your reality. Learn to recognize the difference between genuine kindness and calculated charm. Understand that outward appearances don't always reflect private behavior. Trust the patterns you experienced rather than the image they worked so hard to project. Protect your boundaries, protect your reputation, protect your truth. Because once a narcissist begins building a future centered on their version of events, they often work hard to make that version appear unquestionable. The good news is that their power has limits. It depends on your self-doubt, your silence, and your willingness to accept the identity they've assigned to you. The moment you begin trusting your own perceptions again, setting firm boundaries and refusing to participate in their manipulations, the foundation supporting their control starts to weaken. Their carefully constructed illusion begins to crack. And as you reconnect with your own voice, rebuild your confidence, and surround yourself with people who value honesty over appearances, you reclaim something they could never truly take from you, your identity. Healing doesn't happen because they change. It happens because you stop allowing their version of you to become your own. The moment you choose your truth over their manipulation, your future is no longer written by their lies. It's written by your courage, your resilience, and your decision to move forward without carrying the weight of the false story they tried so desperately to make you believe.